Hello, my name is Kaya. I picked Education and Recidivism and Maslow and Human Nature as my two articles. I picked Education and Recidivism because I have always been passionate about this topic, and Maslow because it is one of my favorite theories and you can relate it to almost anything. First, we're going to talk about the agenda, which we're going to talk about studies and results, themes, theories, and how they relate to what we have discussed in class. And how is it relevant to sociology, and any additional thoughts that I have. First is studies and results. For the Education and Recidivism article, it shows how education can lower the chances of a person reoffending after their release if they are educated, and that there are several benefits to educating the inmates. And for the Maslow and Human Nature article, it shows how Maslow's pyramid is sometimes explained wrong and how you do not have to have 100% of a part completed to move to the next step. Next, we're going to talk about themes. So for the themes for education, they were trying to get the point across that it is worthwhile for the government to put money into education for inmates. And so they talked a lot about the cost of educating the inmates, how previous studies showed that it wasn't worth the actual cost that it was taking, and that was in the 80s and 90s. And then it also did a benefit analysis as well. It also talked about a lot of different studies that were done in the past, and then also how this study was different. So what they did was they took 3 states, and one of which was Ohio, and they divided 2 groups. So one group of inmates that chose to be on the education side, and another group of inmates that chose not to do the education. And so that's what made it different, as well as they also followed them for 3 years. And also they factored in the government and how the employment rate was at that time, as well as the wage that they were making for some of them. And for Maslow in Human Nature, it's expressing how we are more than just human nature and have a higher purpose. So they go into a lot about the misconceptions, motivation, higher purpose, being your actual self, leadership, and goals. And what they did was a classroom experiment to figure this out. Next, we're going to talk about sociological theories. So one of the theories that is mentioned in there is going to be functionalism, and there's 2 parts to that theory. And the first one is strain theory. And so for the education recidivism article, it states that no one was forced to do the education, however they wanted to, which shows internal motivation. However, they stated that it did not affect the actual outcome, which would imply that those inmates had goals. And then also there is social disorganization theory, and that one is shown in there with the socioeconomic problems that are persistent even after release, employment, economy, and lack of respect for authority. The next theory I'm going to talk about is where conflict theory comes in, and there's also 2 parts to this one. So unequal system, so that would be the lack of money Congress wanted to invest in education for inmates. So for the state of Ohio, I know they currently offer education to inmates, and I know a lot of people really enjoy doing that. And there's other things that come into play that I'll talk about in the additional thoughts. And then there's also the power leap, and that is not offering inmates proper items for growth to become productive members of society, so basically keeping them down. So the next theory I would like to talk about is the symbolic interactionism, and this one has 3 parts to it. So labeling theory, and this fits because criminals will never, it says that criminals will never change. That's an idea that a lot of people do have. And so that's labeling them that they'll never be able to change their lives. Why waste the money on them? Things like that. The next one is differential association theory. So being locked up with other individuals that are also criminals and carrying that mentality instead of gaining personal growth, which that one also relates back to Maslow's theory as well. And also then we have control theory, which is harsh human nature punishment for social ties to family and community. So that is considered harsh punishment to lock somebody up so that they are not able to talk to their family and their community. And it's also a lot of punishment for the family as well. And instead of educating them and giving them the proper foundation when they're leaving incarceration, they're just leaving incarceration and going back to what they are used to doing. So on here, I included Maslow's pyramid. Despite Maslow's hierarchy of needs, human needs mainly being a topic in psychology, it still has awareness in the sociological community. So physiological needs also are a societal responsibility. So that's why we have food banks and different programs to help people with assistance for their heating, their cooling, their housing, things like that. Because that is our base need. We need that foundation in our lives. And then there's safety and security, which relates to the community you are in and crime rates. So if you don't feel safe in the community that you live in, then how are you supposed to live a good life and to be able to progress thoroughly through these different parts of the pyramid? Then there's esteem needs, which relates not only to the need for self-respect, but also respect from others. And then self-actualization relates due to the needs for a community that allows a person to pursue what makes them happy, which ultimately improves growth and development of the society as a whole. So I just included here the table from the book with the different theories that I used, and I feel like they all fit very well. I didn't have an issue having them fit into both the articles that I picked. The next is my additional thoughts. So for the education and recidivism study, it stated that motivation did not play a part in looking at the bigger picture. But after reading the Maslow and Human Nature study, you can see that motivation plays a very huge role in how people act from day to day in human nature. There's a lot to be said about how we can improve our society by promoting human growth, starting at the bottom, the very foundation of the pyramid. And the rest can be worked out. Having a stable foundation when leaving incarceration is almost unheard of, which makes it very hard for a person to not reoffend, because that is just what they know how to do by human nature. That is what they know. And so they will continue to do what they're comfortable with. Many more factors go into whether a person is going to commit a crime again, other than education, even though education can help form a solid foundation as it builds self-esteem, and then it also creates a sense of love and belonging, and then they can improve on their self-actualization, which is a continuous process. It's not just a one and done, you got it, which they talk a lot about in Maslow's article as well. And so a few things that I want to bring up is the fact that they left out some key parts, I feel like, in the education article that I read. And those were that, did those people have stable housing? Did they go to sober living? Did they go to a transitional housing? Did they have all their needs met when they were gone? Did they have food? Did they have shelter? Did they have clean water? Did they have a decent community? Did they have a support system to have that sense of love and belonging? Did they do any IOP programs, or did they just get out and just, try to go back to normal life? Because after being incarcerated, or if you've been a person that has steadily been incarcerated throughout your life, institutionalization is a real thing. So I feel like they left out some key parts, but I feel like they got the point across. Of course, like I brought up earlier, Ohio does currently offer education in their prison systems. And so with that being said, I feel like the study must have done what the legislators wanted it to do, but I feel like there's a lot of parts that are missing in our community on how we could be helping. Clearly these people exist, and we're not going to be able to help our community as a whole unless we are all helped individually. And so with that being said, if you have any thoughts or questions, please let me know. I want to thank you for viewing my video, and these are the references for what I used, of which are the 2 articles and also then our textbook. Thank you.